Boy, oh boy, it's time to talk about frame rate.
Let me put my mask on here. Let me put my mask on here. Let me put my mask on here.
What's up, everyone? It's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and most people, myself included, forget that E3 is still going on at the moment, despite all the huge developer and manufacturer shows actually being before E3 officially starts, but that's what most people consider E3. So now that there's a lot of stuff on the show floor, there's people giving interviews, we're finding out more and more information, we're getting more and more release dates and announcements, and we're finding more out about stuff that we may have only heard of before, stuff we may have only heard of for the first time recently, or stuff that may have just been shown off in one of these conferences, or for the first time on the show floor. So, having said all that, Phil Spencer, usually my boy, Based Phil, he has said something stupid. He's kind of put his foot in his mouth at this point. So he claims that most people don't care about 60 FPS. Now, this comes off the back of their whole focus and push for the last year since E3 of 2016, when they first announced Project Scorpio, and every time they've talked about it or touted its quality and features within the last year, as well as at their own conference less than a week ago. This all comes down to the fact that the Xbox One X, it all touted as its powerhouse performance. Well, yes, it is still the most powerful console made. It's not a patch on a PC, but it's still the most powerful console made. That is true. But they have their whole uncompromised 4K. Mostly, we found out more and more and more rapidly that this is becoming very apparently untrue. 60 FPS. Again, same deal. We're having issues already. The console isn't even out. Now, back to the actual point that I'm going to talk about. So, in this interview that we're going to look at, which Game Central, they sat down, they had a bit of a one-on-one with Phil. I won't say a one-on-one because there was other people there as well, but the main interview was with Phil Spencer, and they touched on a number of things, including frame rate. Now, when it comes to frame rate, okay, before we get to the actual interview, is if you ask me, frame rate is probably the most important thing in a game. For the simple reason, it affects the gameplay. It affects the experience. It affects everything you do. Your movement, your control, your interactivity with the game, your reaction with the game. It affects everything. Now, there are one or two exceptions which I generally deem okay. Stuff like a turn-based strategy or anything like that. But when you look at any game that requires live action movement, 60 FPS should be a bare minimum. It's that simple. You look at a first-person shooter game, you look at a third-person shooter game, you look at any type of game that plays with actual live gameplay. If that makes sense, I say live gameplay. I think you know what I mean. Let's look at Persona 5. That's a 30 FPS game. That's fine because that is a turn-based game. You're not inputting actions based on time and reacting on what's happening. You've got all day to sit there. But every other game, the majority of games that launch on these consoles, not just to mention about PC as well, but on these consoles are high-speed games, which require split-second inputs a lot of the time. So 60 FPS should be mandated minimum for a lot of this stuff, at least on Xbox One X. So this comes back to the point where they were asking Phil, it's like, why don't you care about 60 FPS? This was in relation to when Phil said that no one cares about FPS, or most people at least don't care about 60 FPS. So they asked, why do you push, with the Xbox One X, you push for all this marketing about 4K, uncompromised graphics. Why don't you push so hard about 60 FPS? Because this one actually affects gameplay. And he just says it doesn't. Visuals, graphics, they affect gameplay. I was like, they pretty much don't, is how the real world of it is. But when you look at frame rate, that's the actual performance of the game. That's the experience of the game. I've said it already. That's a whole other thing. Now, Phil had this to say in relation to when he was asked about this and the fact that most people don't care about 60 FPS. So he says, don't get me wrong, I love frame rate. I love Ori. It's one of the reasons I love playing Forza Motorsport. But you have to go back to what you said before. This was in relation to something else that we talked about. Most people don't notice. What frame rate does Minecraft run at? Here's the problem, Phil. Minecraft runs at 60 FPS. It's that simple. Even on the 360, it runs at 60 FPS. They specifically lowered the resolution on the 360 version when they were developing it to make it run at 60 FPS. His argument is basically invalid. Minecraft runs at 60 FPS on Xbox One, on PS4, on 360. It runs at 1,000,000 FPS on PC, and no one cares about the Wii U version or the Vita version. I don't know anything about the PS3 version. Even the Switch version runs at 60 FPS. And they went out of their way to make sure it at least ran in 720p 60 FPS before anything else. So it's just ridiculous. I think Phil is damage controlling to the max here, because over the last year, they've focused on touting 4K, touting uncompromised graphics and actual true 4K resolution, neither of which are actually happening. They've touted 60 FPS the entire time, again, which does not happen. So I think this is ridiculous, and I realize it's his job to do this, and his job to say this, his job to damage control, and his job to hype up his console so it will sell. But this just comes across at the level of stupidity that I'd expect from fanboy channels on YouTube. I won't name names because that's not what I do, but that's what I expect. Oh, that's not what I expect. That's what this sounds like, and it's the level of thing I would expect from one of those channels or one of those people or whatever. I'm actually disappointed that Phil didn't think about what he was saying, or at least maybe it made sense in his mind, because I've generally respected Phil. For the simple reason is he turned the Xbox One brand around after Don Matrick drove it into the ground before its actual launch, and he's done a number of pro-consumer choices for the Xbox One. Obviously, it's to do with improving his brand's image and the level of appeal his console and product has to sell more, but at the end of the day, it's still a number of pro-consumer choices which benefit us, the consumer. So it is what it is. But this did knock him down one or two pegs in my book, at least, anyway. So what's the deal? Do you think over the next couple of months between now and November 7th, we're going to see more and more and more exposure of the Xbox One X and its lack of ability to hit a true 4K, to hit uncompromised 4K, to hit uncompromised graphics, to hit 60 FPS? Certain other games like Destiny 2, for example, many places were thinking that it was going to be confirmed as 60 FPS on Project Scorpio or Xbox One X, but now it's confirmed to be 30 FPS. So you see my trend, and you see how it continues here. I believe more and more games are going to be like this, especially within the next couple of months when we find all this out. What do you think? Not just about frame rate. What do you think about the Xbox One X? Do you think they should focus on specific things? Do you think it's acceptable that after a year of this being their big marketing push and marketing hype, and now it's just not the case? What's the deal? Let me know all that in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.